So welcome everyone. So it's great to see a virtual room full of content professionals and IT professionals from, well, around the world, apparently, and from various industries. So thank you for participating to this content delivery masterclass today. But why are you here today? Why did you join? Maybe you reached the limitations of how you're currently delivering your content, or there is a big change in your company or in your industry that makes that much more will be requested from your content or your team, or you have a very ambitious vision of how your content should serve your company and your customers, but you are not sure of what technology and tools are going to help you achieve this. So in all cases, you're in the right place. That's already good news. So we are Free Topics. I'm Géraldine Boulez, VP of Marketing at Free Topics, and Fabrice Lacroix will also be your co-host today. Before we start, I will just like to give a quick disclaimer. We are not going to provide you with a 200-line checklist of the different things you need to validate before you choose a content delivery solution. No, instead, what we want to do is to draw a map of the different use cases and business cases for content delivery, for modern content delivery. Probably, and what we hope is that you will find yourself in the map, and we want to be able to give you some key elements to be able to match your needs or what you're searching with the key elements to reach your objectives within these business cases. So I also have a second disclaimer, or rather a note. We are going to speak a lot about content delivery platforms, and it's important that we have a common understanding of what content delivery platforms are and why they emerged. And good news again, Fabrice, I think you were there when content delivery platforms were born, so maybe you can tell us a little more about it.
Yep, thank you, Geraldine. So what are content delivery platforms and what can you expect from them? And to understand that, probably it's good to see the reason why they are here and how they emerged. So that's pretty simple. Back then, say 20 years ago, life was simple. So you were writing content, you had one tool, one source of information for that. And probably with that, you were just generating those printed material that were shipped to customers. So one backend, no front end. Then probably you switch to generating PDFs to replace those printed documents. But still, you had just one source of information that you were controlling and pressing a button, generating those PDFs, shipping that to customers as well, one way or the other. And then maybe at some point, instead of shipping that on USB keys or CD-ROMs, you starting building a documentation portal. But again, that was pretty simple and straightforward because you had one source of information where everything was written, controlled, and then you can press a button, output some whatever HTML, and put that on a website and to build your doc portal. So life was simple. Sadly, things started becoming more complex with the multiplication of content sources and where the source information was residing, whether it was on CAD or PLMs and maybe a bit in SharePoint, and then you have your Jira, wikis, and then maybe as well a web CRM, an ERP. So more and more information was created inside your company, and you still needed to integrate that in your documentation to make that available to customers. And in that case, with this multiplication of backends, you had only two options. One is keep this idea of using a single source of content and start of ingesting all the necessary bits of content from the sources inside the CCMS, inside your topics when you design your content, and then keep this single source, single touch point way of delivering content. But again, everything has to be put inside the CCMS, which usually was done mostly by copying and pasting the necessary content from those repositories, which is a pretty tedious work for tech writers. The other option is unifying content not in the CCMS level, at the authoring level, but at the delivery layer, namely here in your doc portal. which then means that you have to build a lot of custom scripts for outputting the content from those different systems, transform that content, try to build more HTML-like pages or PDFs and put that on the doc portal and organize everything. So that's a lot of custom script, very complex to run and to maintain. And that's exactly where you are with your this tech doc portal. But life became even more complex with the multiplication of front-end system. It's not just the tech doc portal now where that content is needed. That can be in your LMS system or in your helpdesk system or field service management. So you have more and more touch points as well where content is needed to streamline the operations, make people more efficient, make your customers self-reliant. And if you keep this idea of we need to publish from every backend system into those front ends, you end up having these super messy things where everything is interconnected, because for each touch point, you have to export the content, maybe transform it in a very specific format so that it fits into the FSM, into the LMS, into the forums, into the help desk. And the more touch points and the more sources you have, it becomes exponentially complex and impossible to maintain. And this is exactly what CDP, the problem that CDP's content delivery platforms is solving. It's simplifying all that by ingesting all the content that you have in all the sources, creating a unified repository of content. So it's not replacing the way you write content, the way that content is created and managed, but it's just collecting that, syncing in real time with all the sources, and then making that content available to all the touch points. Okay, so you don't have to maintain scripts everywhere, but really you can just create with CDPs this unifying your content and disseminate your content into every touch point that you have. And as part of the scope of what a CDP does, it's also helping you build those tech doc portals in a more modern way. We're talking here about dynamic content delivery, personalized experience, all the things we're going to talk about today. And maybe as well, so that you understand how much it's helping you in this process, if you notice, the arrows on that drawings are part of the CDP. It means that your CDP, a modern CDP platform, has all the connectors to ingest the content wherever it comes from, do the transformation inside the CDP, so that you don't have to maintain the scripts for outputting, transforming content. The heavy lifting of analyzing the content, enriching, aligning, transforming, everything is done by the CDP platform. So it's just like getting the content as it is, making this work internally like magic, and then helping you build portals or feed those other touch points in a seamless way. So that's what we're talking about today. This is what a CDP is, and this is what you can expect from that. So this is more from an evolutionary and process perspective, but now I will hand it over to Geraldine that will explain how it fits into a more strategic perspective.
Yes, thank you. So now that we understand what CDPs are, we are going to dig into the why. So why a CDP and what problems do they solve? So they actually tackle different challenges at different levels. And the level number one is the one that Fabrice just mentioned, is about fixing some technology issues. And it's about the main concern as regarded the main challenges that are addressed are regarding content publishing and content accessibility. Once these problems have been addressed and become a no-brainer, then we can address some more strategic challenges. And this is where the business impact starts. So CDP provides the key features for improving daily operations within a company, improving how people work and how they learn and how they engage with your teams and company. So that's the second level is with people and operations. Ultimately, and the third level, ultimately, a CDP is a key enabler for wider enterprise initiatives that goes from improving brand reputation to enabling digital transformation and creating new business models. We are not going to discuss the compliance and security points today because they are the underlying layer, I would say, that is common to any tech project, any adoption of a new technology solutions. So we can definitely provide for this. We can provide a checklist like IT security checklist so that you could look into, but that's not going to be the points that we will discuss thoroughly today. What we're going to do is like deep dive into the stack layer by layer, starting at publishing.
Okay, thank you. So still we're going to, you're right, we need to dig a little further into what I started describing, the reason why CDP appeared on the market and the problem they are solving from an IT infrastructure perspective. But then we can look at it in more details, particularly this first layer, which is the publishing layer. 80% of the content professionals that reach out to us initially look at a solution because they've reached the limitations of their current processes on how they are publishing that content, really how they can make that content available, at what speed, and how they do it. It's like replacing those scripts that I have talked about earlier. So most of their challenges are around coping with more volume, the speed of delivery, the formats to be handled, more formats added as more content sources appear, and the way they can monitor and report on that. So that's really the key thing. First, being volume. So with the times have changed a lot, and we see more and more content. And when we start a project with our customers, usually they start with regular tech doc, should I say. And even there, we see that it's growing quite fast because of the products having more and more variants and more customized product, whether it's software and hardware. It's almost, sometimes in hardware, we have customers that have clients that have products per customer, that really one product per each customer. It's heavily customized, and heavily customizing a product means that you have to match, to provide the matching documentation for that. But it's also about versioning, and more companies are global now, taking advantage of global markets, which means that they translate more. So it's multiplying and multiplying over, and we see this large volume of content. And that's one aspect of it if you just look at it from the pure tech doc perspective. But we see now that in tech doc, in CDPs, not only do you publish tech doc, but as well parts catalog, past cases, everything that can help different stakeholders be more efficient. It's like if you want to augment and support your support agent and make them more capable of answering complex questions, it's better if the platform has access to the past cases, make that part of the knowledge, because then when a support agent is searching for a complex problem, then they can find similar cases in the past that had been solved and refer to that as well. So that becomes enterprise knowledge as well. So more and more with CDPs, companies don't look at content that enable stakeholders, not just like tech doc, but it's becoming wider than that, that increases the volume of content that is published and the capabilities needed at the CDP level. So we are talking easily now millions of the equivalent of millions of pages of content, because if you just take past cases, that can easily be tens or hundreds of thousands of cases that you ingest in the CDP. It doesn't mean that the end user will see those cases, but you have to put them in the same place in the CDP, and then they can be visible only by internal people or support agents and experts. But at least they get easy access to that, and it's linked to the doc and automatically connected so that they can find more easily advanced knowledge. So that's one. The volume becomes a huge challenge for many companies, and that's where they need to switch to a more capable systems like CDPs. Another dimension, another problem that our customers have to tackle is the speed at which they make their content available, especially new content, fixed content, updated content. If you write, update everything in your CMS, and then when you press a button, it generates HTML, you put that on a staging environment, it has to be transformed, then put on a server, blah, blah, and it takes few weeks to do that. And we had customers for which it was taking up to 3 months just to release a new version of the content. The problem is that if it takes you 3 months to release a new version of your content, you cannot cope with faster release cycles that we see today, where we see, for example, software products being released every month or every week now. So you need to be able to release your content, updated content, new content in matter of days, if not hours or minutes, which becomes critical. And we see the same need of faster release cycle with now security need, security fixes, which makes you in need of releasing content faster, new products faster. And that's also true in the industry for manufacturing. We see that more and more because products, even hardware products, have software, embedded software, which changes the capabilities of the product, but as well because the product themselves are adapted and made of subsystems and modules that are updated separately, which means that each and every product are released regularly with new capabilities, and the documentation has to be updated as well on the fly. So speed of delivery is a key factor of efficiency of a company, and that's where you need a system that can cope with that increase of speed. So a third one, as I mentioned, is which is putting more pressure on content delivery and the need of CDPs, and the idea of switching to something that is more robust, is the multiplication of sources and formats. As I said earlier, it's more like now you need to have access to parts catalog at the same place as past cases, regular tech doc, service built-in, subject matter experts, information that may be in a wiki internally, marketing data sheets from the product department. So a lot of information, and if you want to make that happen easily in a company, if you want to have more people contributing to generating that knowledge, you need to be able to ingest that content the way it's written. You cannot force all these stakeholders to write in data or whatever tools you have for managing your official tech doc, but you may need to be able to ingest knowledge-based articles written by support agents from the help desk system, and maybe input as well Word files that are provided by marketing or subject matter experts, and markdown content coming from developers and all that. So this multiplication, though accelerating the pace at which you can generate, ingest, update the knowledge repository, requires to ingest those formats from many tools and sources, still being able to transform that content so that it looks being unified at the end as if it was written with a single tool internally, which is not the case anymore. So that becomes the responsibility of the delivery layer to unify the content, the experience, and the way people can search, navigate, and access that content, regardless the tool that has been used for writing that content. Which means as well, for not just the content, but means as well aligning metadata, enriching documents and all that to create a consistent user experience. So that's a key aspect of the challenges you can have when publishing content. It's enlarging the types of content that you will put into this doc portal repository through the repository, thanks to CDP. And last, again, I mentioned monitoring and reporting. The more rapidly you publish, the more sources, the more silos of information contribute to building that unified repository of knowledge, the more you need tools for monitoring in real time what's happening, troubleshooting content publishing. You cannot be blind about the fact that some content coming from a wiki or Word files uploaded by subject matter experts, or something coming from SharePoint, if something goes wrong and the content is not badly formatted and cannot be published, you have to be aware of that. You need to troubleshoot that. So again, you can go back to the source. So you need tools that are very mature to that regard in the capability to make this happen and get full visibility and traceability of the content processing. That's where simple scripts may not be enough, and that's why CDPs are a game changer in all these publishing needs. So that's, well, we said there's no shopping list, there's no 200 lines. Still, at the end of each section, we put, again, few main points here. What do you need to check if you are to choose your CDP, your new system for publishing content? Again, it's about connectors. Is it able to support all the content that you have today, as well adapt to the future and what you plan to do next? It's about unifying content, granularity, metadata. So you need to check all those content architecture capabilities, but as well, it needs to be programmable. Does it have web services for automating the publishing of content, access logs, monitoring for everything? So yeah, so fast, being fast, scalable. So all of that should be part of your shopping list. But again, it depends on how much content, what type of content. So you need to adapt that and make it fit it to your specific use case. So that was just the first layer. The next one is about accessibility, findability. So once you have created this repository, what can you do then? And that's interesting because 60% of the companies that come to us said they have a problem with content findability, and that users complain about not finding content. Can be end users that are customers, can be support agents, people internally, but a huge, one of the biggest problems people have with what they have today is people can't find content. So you're going to tell me that 80% for publishing plus 60% is more than 100. That's right. It means that many of the people that come to us have not only a publishing issue, but as well findability issue. So it's a lot of problems to be solved. So again, here, CDPs are not just tech doc portals. That's very important to keep that in mind and make that part of your shopping list and your way you analyze what you need for transforming your operations. Is it brings you the capability to build those touch points, those resource centers, tech doc portals, as you name it. But as well, it's meant to serve existing touch points so that you can feed this content and fuel those touch points with this content everywhere where it's needed. That can be in product help, help desk tool, community sites where people start discussing a problem, and then you can propose content that relates to that subject. So there's a lot that can be done here. That can be building a chatbot on top. You need that. We'll get to that later. So it's really the new place where the content resides, and that will be used for feeding everything, including building portals. And talking about that, then probably what you have to look at when you analyze your needs and the products that exist on the market is, what are the tools that you have in the CDP for building your own portals? Is it just APIs, like pure headless, but you need developers to rebuild everything? So do you need IT resources and dev skills? Or is it something that is existing but super strict, hard-coded, very templated, and you lack flexibility there? What are the resources then that are needed for designing those portals, those touch points? Is it easy once it's developed, put in place? Is it easy to adapt to new requirements? Can you cope with accessibility constraints, responsiveness to provide portals that work on any device, multilingual capabilities as well, UI, translation? All that are very important constraints and requirements that our customers have. So the way we solve it in 3 topics, it's pretty simple. The solution, the CDP 3 topics comes with a low-code, no-code UI designer, so that you can build any UI, any interaction, any user experience by dropping object, put in a few CSS. So it's very efficient, doesn't require advanced dev skills. So that's how we tackle the problem, and that makes our customers pretty happy, I can tell you. But that's key to know if it's going to be a big project to build those touch points, and even more, what's the cost of maintaining, changing, adapting those touch points that you will create with the CDP. Another thing that's important as well, as part of what you need to analyze when you choose a CDP and you move to this new paradigm, is what is the reading experience you want to provide? Can this customer experience, reading experience be defined the way you see it, the way that fits you with your content, with your product, with your strategy. Again, as opposed to having something that is super hard-coded, rigid, and where you can just change the colors and maybe the logo. Can you do so? Can you make that look like what you need depending on the type of content? I have 3 examples here. One from JFrog. So you see the way they have chosen to design this reading experience with the tables rendered. This screenshot comes from our own TechDoc portal where we have a lot of step-by-step instructions on how to do things, how to configure the product. And you see here that we can build these sort of action lines, 1, 2, 3. So on the documents, but we can have as well content that is in that case here API documentation. And when it's API documentation, can it be rendered in a way that is adapted to rendering API doc? And if it's part catalog, 3D models, videos, how is it rendered in the UI? How can you make that happen? Branding it dynamically. So that's a key part of a successful project when moving to a CDP and moving to new TechDoc portals, new touch points, is making sure that you have this capability to make them, to create this new wow experience that is really changing the way people access your content and read it. Talking about access, and back to what I said initially here, search matters a lot. It's probably the most underestimated and complex feature to evaluate in a CDP. And we see that because usually in the RFPs, we receive Excel spreadsheets and it just says, do you have keyword search? Do you support Boolean, exact search, facets, whatever? And there are like 10 features like that, which are, there's nothing about relevance. How do you measure relevance? How can we tune relevance? What is the security, spell checker, autocomplete? So keyword search in itself is really something pretty complex, and that's quite tough to evaluate as well. But it's key because regardless the effort you put into publishing content, if people can't find this content, if people, your users are bothered with the experience of findability, if they can't find content, it is as it's not existing. So whatever the time you've taken and the energy you've taken into writing that content, publishing that content, if at the end of the day the search capabilities of the platform is weak, then the user experience will be weak as well. So search is super important, and you need to find a way to evaluate that, probably do a POC or ask more specific questions. And talking about search, it used to be keyword search until recently, but now you have to take into account and ask about semantic search, which is the search capability for replying to natural language questions. Like you see here, how far does this drone fly? It's not a keyword search, and it's not just bringing back documents, but replying to questions. So it's part of that. Having search that not only works for keyword type searches, but as well for NLP, natural language searches, and as well being able to power chatbots and RAG system. So you need to look at those 2 search capabilities now when you shop for a CDP and when you run those projects. Last, as I said, still, even though you're supposed to build, most of you build TechDoc portals using the CDP and the capabilities of the CDP, like these low-code, no-code designers I've talked about. Still, you need to check how you can use your CDP to feed those other touch points. Whether here you see a screenshot doing in-product help, like in whatever your software is, you can add question marks like this, and suddenly you have this pop-up windows that are contextual to where the user is in the application. It says, okay, you're in that screen. This is what you can do. This is how it's solved. So contextual in product help, but that you have to check how you can achieve this sort of integration using APIs, whether it's search and retrieval APIs, but as well widgets, components for ease of integration. That's part of the things you have to check. So again, rapid, I won't go through it again, but you'll get access to the slides. Again, those are things that, depending on your key requirements and what your project is, but you should check is, again, APIs and the maturity of APIs, the security of APIs, search capabilities, content accessibility, the granularity, if you can pull raw content, style content, so how you can get this content out, in what format you can get the content out of the repository, how you can customize, design your doc portal in any language, and all of that. So that's part of what you have to check. Moving on to the next layer. So again, the first two layers that we talked about are publishing and then publish and read, which are really this, I would say, almost basic thing that you can expect from a CDP. That's the must-have. I mean, you wouldn't switch to a CDP, you don't get rid of your homegrown scripts, tech doc portal with the search, everything you have built over time, if it's not for the better technologically, if it's not solving the problems I've mentioned earlier, speed, volume, efficiency, findability. But then what's interesting is to look at the CDP from a higher perspective and ask for more. I mean, dream big. If you switch to a CDP, it's for dreaming big. And the next thing that a CDP will bring you, modern CDPs, is enabling users to be more efficient, changing the way people work, making your customer more self-efficient. So it's really for transforming readers from being passive readers to considering their individual needs and the way they work. Typical example is personalizing content. The first one is really having a platform that adapts to my profile, adapts to my way of working, learns about what type of document I'm usually reading, proposing me more targeted content around my profile, like I'm a developer, I'm a maintenance guy, I'm a support agent, so I'm an expert, I'm a newbie. So depending on who I am, having a platform that learns automatically and can adapt the same way that when you run a search on Google and I run the same search on Google, we would have different result pages. I cannot tell you go to the fourth result because your fourth result or fifth result on the page will be different. That's the same. You need to expect that. You need to get that. You should get that from your CDP. It's personalization of the user experience. And another one is contextualization, which is a bit different. It's not adapting to the user itself. It's adapting automatically to the situation of the user. Say I am a field technician that have to do some maintenance, or I'm a developer working on a specific version of a product. I need content that is relevant to that situation, to that machine that I have to fix to service, to that device, to that software version. So it's about making sure that the content that you bring from findability perspective or from readability, you adapt the content so that it's automatically matching not only the profile of the user, but the situation, so that you make sure this way that people are not looking at irrelevant content, but they are just using content that applies to the situation they are in. So that's why you need to expect from your CDP that what you need for your users is making sure that it's not just about ingesting content and creating nice pages, but making sure that the experience people get when accessing your content, reading your content, applies to the profile, the situation. That's very important. And another one is moving from, that's what we call moving from content to information, being more specific. And then the next step is moving from information to service, which is here there's one slide on AI, it's not that much. I know it's very trendy. We do seminars and webinars on AI, but here there's one slide only, just to tell you how AI maybe is shadowing a lot of aspects of content delivery, content accessibility, but in fact, it's not replacing everything. It's just an added way of accessing content. But AI, just talking about AI doesn't mean that you still need to create this repository to make AI work. I mean, AI needs content. So you need to create this unified repository of content. You need to solve this publishing layer thing before you can do AI, okay? And then even though you do AI and you create a chatbot, at some point, people may need to refer to the content itself. They may need to click and say, okay, now show me this procedure. show me how to do it, show me the detailed version of this API that I want to use. And in that case, you have to display the content. Then we're back to readability, which was level 2. So as you see, the first layers I've been talking about, publishing, readability, findability, are not replaced by AI. AI is just a new way, a better way, another way of accessing content, like chatbots, RAG question answering, case deflection, like this example where you can, and that's the screenshot I've shown earlier. It's like you can ask question, and then instead of being, as a result, a list of documents, you can have a direct answer, but you can always click and go back to the content itself, check the procedure, check the source content. So that's the idea of putting AI in the system. So this CDP that you are shopping for, looking for, what CDP bring now, modern CDP and free topics bring, is really this embedded AI capabilities natively provided, so that it's not like you have content and you have to build a fully separate project where you dump the content, you reload the content. The RAG capabilities, the semantic search capabilities now are part of a CDP and provide you with these RAG capabilities, and you can build your chatbots on top or use chatbots provided by the CDPs like Free Topics. So that's where we are. That should be your shopping list for this next layer, this new layer, which is streamlining operations, enabling users being more efficient, customers being self-reliant, is checking the capabilities of the system on how it can learn from the user, apply a user profile, connect to a CRM, for example, as well, to get some insights from the CRM on what product this customer has acquired, then apply those, make the content applicable to that, learns on the user behavior, and so forth. So that's what you need to check, and the capabilities you need to check and look for when you're moving to a CDP. Back to you, Geraldine, maybe for this next layer.
Yes, let's go one step beyond. So we've seen publishing, accessibility, enablement, and beyond enablement, there is user engagement. Beyond the individual users, there are people and communities that need animating, and beyond individual or pieces of content, there is knowledge. And knowledge is really at the core of enterprise challenges these days, in particular, knowledge sharing and knowledge transfer. And that's for a good reason, because the market is changing, the workforce and the work habits are changing, and employees and knowledge retention have become a real subject. We see in many industries that the aging workforce is really a major issue. And in the customer-facing industries, all sectors included, the high turnover is a real threat. So this, with the lack of experience, is to train more and more newcomers in the companies at a higher pace, by the way, and to be able to onboard, to continuously train the new ones. Additionally, there is this trend, this learning trend of learning remotely by consuming content on demand. All these, the lack of resources, the pace at which you need to train more people, and the change in learning habits lead to move the focal point from the company, the physical company, to go to digital workplaces. And these workplaces are deeply rooted into your enterprise content. So these workplaces that are a new way actually to onboard, to get people involved and engaged within the company, and actually also outside the company, rely on 3 pillars. So the first pillar are the members. So building workplaces starts by defining who will be part of these communities. That can be based on their profile, that can be based on the interest of the different users. And we also need to define whether that's going to be within the boundaries of your company or outside these boundaries, if you want to include partners and customers into these communities. So in all cases, you'll have to have the capability to define, to manage, to monitor, and to control these communities, this group of interest, with, for instance, the ability to manage the required entitlements for these different people. So the first point, the first pillar is the management of the community, the management and administration of a community. The second pillar is enabling collaboration. These communities, these workplaces are actually not just libraries of content. Of course, your content must be part of these workplaces. You must have your data sheets available, the instructions, the manuals, even the price list according to what you want to do within these workplaces. But that's not enough. If you really want to make it a workplace and not just a library or a database, you have to grant it, you have to give some collaborative capabilities to these workplace. And for instance, some capabilities that enable people to make the content theirs. I'm thinking, for instance, of the ability to package your own set of documents or pieces of content to serve your daily needs, to reference to your own library of content that you are going to consult. Also, the ability to discuss with other people within this community or to point them to with a link to some pieces of content. So all these collaboration features need to be available in order to really make it a workplace. I just want to take two examples of how some of our customers are using the workplace in their daily business. One is a manufacturing company, so they have their own service engineers, but they are also working with service partners for installation and maintenance. And their service engineers are crafting, bundling some set of documentations that correspond to the exact installation that their partners have to service. So they can provide not the generic information, but really what's of interest and to make the next service call a success at their service partners. Another example that is more sales driven is coming from a customer of ours who is in high-tech devices, and they work a lot with resellers. Their sales engineers are crafting, assembling responses to requests for proposals along with the resellers, and they pick the right information from the company knowledge, the company core content, in order to build accurate response to RFP and to transfer them to share them with their resellers. So that's two examples of collaboration within a workplace. So that's the second pillar. The third pillar is about contribution, and it's probably one of the most important. So your knowledge is not a static thing, it's a living thing. You cannot ask your content team to design and create all the content concerning your product. They cannot cover all of it, including the daily use cases. They are not using the product on a daily basis. They cannot see the different cases where they will be in use, the problems that people will encounter, etc., etc. On the opposite, users or service engineers, for instance, support agents, but also end users of the solutions of the product that they provide. They live with the product, and they can provide like some insightful content that needs to be shared in the workplace, that should be shared in the workplace to enrich the knowledge of the company. I'm thinking, well, basically the least actually that they should be able to provide is feedback on the existing content. That's not, and comments on how really the product is working in such and such situations. But ultimately, the goal would also be that they could contribute with articles, with photos, videos of the live product in real life. And that should contribute to the workplace, that should live in the workplace. But ultimately, what's important for the company is that it also incorporates into the core knowledge of the company. In that case, if you want to retrieve these user-generated content into your company knowledge, then you will have to set some procedures and some processes, validation processes, to validate that this content can also grow the company knowledge, not just within the workplace, but across the company. So a CDP can enable these kind of workplaces where people meet, where they capitalize and they grow the enterprise knowledge. I think we have we have a checklist, but I will let you go through that. And that's basically summarizing the key elements: being able to define the rights, the access based on roles and profiles, feedback ratings and comment and notes being really the minimum that should be, that users or members of the communities should be able to complement. Personal book and collections, actually to craft and to make the knowledge your own, and adding content and validation are the main points you need to check for that part. All right. We are getting into the final, the upper layer of our map. That's where actually your enterprise knowledge can be a major player in your brand reputation, in business development, and in digital transformation. The first point, brand reputation, is actually dear to my heart as a marketing person, and I'm not going to tell anyone his job when or tell anything new when I say that the content that you create is a major reserve of relevant information, not only for your existing users, but also for your future customers. The product content that you create and that you own and the metadata that you add to it are actually a treasure for internet referencing. Knowing that, the main problem is how to use it, how to implement that, and how to make it accessible, how to make it a benefit for SEO and for actually your brand and product awareness. Some of the content may be confidential, some other may be public. How do you optimize the metadata so that it fits the SEO needs? That's all actually questions and also technology questions that you may, organization and technology questions that you may have. Just know that the CDP with native SEO functionalities will help with that. We have two examples of Fliptopics customers that implemented these capabilities, and the results are pretty pretty amazing. Hexagon, for instance, they moved from the zero web presence to the first page of Google, and we marketing people know how difficult this can be, even with great content. So definitely product content helped a lot. And Teradata, they turned their documentation portal into the company's most visited website and generated a lot of traffic and a lot of awareness about their product and brand. So that's the kind of outcomes that you can expect. Very last, maybe, yes. So a CDP can also help provide some new services to your customers and to your partners. For instance, giving access to a 24/7 remote assistant if it's an AI assistant or assistance through a dedicated customer portal. You can also offer different level of customer support based on different levels of accessibility to content. So these services can be monetized or not. Oh yes, they can be monetized. Probably you would like to monetize them, as we're really seeing more models of premium assistance that monetize content-based services. Also, we can see some subscription-based model emerge these days based on content, the availability of content, the speed, like having premium access to new content, etc. So these can definitely create some new business models, or actually power some new business models within your company. And maybe Fabrice, I think you have another example that you wanted to raise with us.
That's interesting. And back to maybe these first layers, as I said initially, 140% of the time when people reach out to us want to know more about Fliptopics, that's because they have a technical issue. So it's more like, okay, I have limitation in the way I publish content, the speed, the volume, can't cope, traceability, findability, website design, revamping everything, out of date technology. So something like that, more the lower layer. And then we say, yeah, sure, we fix that, and that's out of the box because that's what Fliptopics does. And then they realized as well that they have these huge personalization capabilities, and then this fourth layer, which is collaboration of, and engagement of people around the content itself, and that the content itself can be the soil where people start engaging and interacting. So it's very specific use cases for that. And then what you described, Geraldine, is interesting, is that there are way more benefits than what people were initially looking for. So you were mentioning reinforcing brand awareness and contributing to product visibility with SEO, or the capability to design new business models. But again, those are just two examples, and I will give a third one, but that's just depends on you, depends on your business, depends on your creativity as well. But most of the time what we see is that once these technological issues have been fixed by deploying free topics, our customers realize that they will do way more than that. And a good example is this one. It's a real numbers from a customer. It's building technology, so lots of different devices for building technology, and they were in each box they were putting printed documentation. And the problem is that when you put those devices inside the building, usually the installer open the box while it's renovation work, so it's a massive mess. They take the documentation, they put it somewhere, then it rains on it, it's lost anyway. They know how to install the device or not, but at some point, maybe when the device needs to be serviced, the documentation is not there anymore. And what they said, it's like, it's crazy because we have lots of cost printing this content, putting it in a box, and it gets lost. And at the moment it's needed, it's not there anymore. So what they did is pretty simple. They said, okay, let's put QR codes on the boxes under the device themselves, because people don't know exactly the model number or whatever. And then they have just QR codes on those building technology devices. And they said, well, if people can scan the QR code and get access to the exact documentation for that device in that configuration, then maybe for maintenance, then maybe they can do it as well for installation, that they don't need the documentation anymore. So let's stop printing. And just over like 3 or 4 product lines, they stop printing everything, stop printing everything, just put QR codes on the boxes, on the devices. They have reduced their printing cost by 30% year on year over time. And they have saved last year, just last year, that was just 2024, they have saved 9 million on direct printing costs. And it's increasing every year. So you see the ROI of the system is just more than 10 times, just on 100 times, just on one side effect. It was not even the core project initially, was really solving publishing issues. But when it was in place, they realized that they could do QR codes with deep linking onto the content and just that stamp printing. And that was a side effect, cascading benefits. And just that small side project had a huge ROI. And it was not even the core reason why they chose a CDP. So you see, that's interesting because once you have these CDPs in place, you will see how much you can do with that, how it's enabling you to do more, and you will imagine new business models, new ways, find ways to stop printing, save, improve your ESG policy and all that. So I think that's interesting. You have to keep that in mind, that even though for the moment, maybe you just see the problems that you have and you just want to switch to CDP for solving these short-term technical problems, keep in mind that at the end, the real benefits will be beyond these technological problems that you are solving, but real business impact. So that's one of the key messages we wanted to give you today, and that's how you need to shop for a CDP. Look at those benefits you can get and the capability of the platform to support those benefits. Last word is for you, Geraldine. Takeaways.
Yes,
Last
a
slide.
few takeaways. Yeah, a few takeaways before we take your questions. So 80% of content professionals should choose a CDP for technical problem, for technology, for publishing problems, but actually really, truly 100% of them achieve much more. Although a content delivery platform is really a scalable solution that can be implemented in phase, that's extremely flexible, we would recommend consider the big picture from scratch, a big project from scratch, or at least build the different business cases and involve the different stakeholders within the companies to build the overall business case at the beginning, when actually you are looking for budgets for the project, because we all know that budgets for content-based projects are not that easy to find, to get, and that enterprise-wide projects, I'm not saying that everything is going to be done from scratch at the kickoff of the project, but getting the support from different stakeholders within maybe marketing, customer service, and field service, for instance, for those who have field services, can terribly, can accelerate actually the decision process and get you the management buy-in and the budget that you need to ultimately make your content a key of your enterprise strategy. So really, we really recommend to think the whole project at the beginning, and even if the benefits are going to come well, incrementally, let's say.